What does a fish say when he hits a wall? Damn. Ba-da-da boom. Okay, you haven't quite hit the wall yet. We're only in the third week. But let's talk about pricing. And pricing is one of the 4 P's. And these are the factors that allow us to implement a marketing strategy. And the others are product, place, or distribution, and also promotion. And so, do the 4 P's still matter? One thing you'll hear about from a lot of modern marketers is, oh, the 4 P's are dead, marketing's changed so much. And it's because in this digital age, price is more about perception, distribution is about access, product is about solution, and promotion is about education. So, are they right? Well, actually, each of those factors is a subset of what price is about. Yes, all those things are about the 4 P's, but the 4 P's actually extend beyond that. And they think, well, because we live in a modern world, this is what it's all about. But, we still build traditional houses. We still do all of these things. We still grocery shop. So just because the world is changing and you bring in new technology, it doesn't mean that some of the traditional concepts still don't apply. However, the digital and physical world are still entwined together. You can't have one without the other right now. An example is like Amazon and Walmart. Amazon realizes that in order to get customer intimacy, they need to have physical contact with customers. So they bought Whole Foods and they're buying physical outlets out. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got Walmart, who wants to start selling online. And so they've teamed up with Google and they're going toe-to-toe. However, just because Walmart wants to be like Amazon, can they? I don't know about all of you, but my experience of Walmart is anytime I use any of their digital services, it's like I go there and, ship to store, it's supposed to be there for me, and I'm there 20 minutes. It's like, sheesh, I should have just gone and picked it up myself. But anyway, so these are the topics that we're going to talk about today. And the basic concept is how much people are going to pay is still based on perception of how they look at my product, but I still have to charge a certain amount if I'm going to make a profit. So what drives that perception? And what it comes down to is everything has to play together. The landscape, your customers, and your strategy. How does that compare to the other 4 P's? They all have to play together. And to give you an example, supposing I have a luxury product. In terms of distribution, am I going to sell it through a Walmart? No, I'm going to have like boutique stores or something like that to sell it through. If I have something that costs 50 cents, how much promotion am I going to do? Well, it's going to have to be darn cheap, because at 50 cents, unless I'm selling a billion of these things or something like that, it's hard to make money. So you could see how they all have to be in agreement together. And so whether it's digital or using innovation, this is how everything plays together. Now, in terms of pricing, why is pricing so important? Well, financially, it sets our bottom line and how much money we're going to make. Pricing also has a humongous impact. Remember, it's the most emotional element of the 4 P's. The story about Netflix, you raise a price on someone and guess what? There's backlash. And also the attributes that affect pricing, and essentially all of the 5 C's affect pricing. How is pricing done? There's basically 2 ways. One is value-based or perception pricing, and that's what you charge what people think it's worth. The other part is cost-based pricing, and cost-based pricing means that based on how much it costs me to make and support this product, how much of a profit do I need to make in order for it to be worthwhile to me? And so that's it. That's basically how pricing's done. Now, do companies collude? Yes, they do collude. They call it an average, but they all share information. And part of the reason why I don't think salaries would ever go up, except for the fact that you have small companies and things like that that attack talent, and so they realize they have to charge more. So the driving forces behind the pricing is the 5 C's. That if context changes, your price can change. Understanding your customers and how elastic they are, meaning how sensitive are they to price changes in terms of their purchases and all of it. So in terms of customer analysis, I need to know economically how much is this worth to my customer, and I can do that by understanding what their price response is. And so I can segment my customers based on these different price sensitivities. And so here's an example of earned value, and that's that say you had a product out there, and these are its cost factors. Well, I make a better product, so I'm going to charge a little bit more, which is $100. Also, my startup costs and my support costs are a lot less. So all of a sudden, my surplus is a lot bigger than the product out there. The question is if I keep the profit the same, what do I do with this extra surplus? Do I give it to the customer or do I keep it? Let's think about Apple for a moment here. Apple, excuse me, my throat was dry. Apple, they sell their phones through all different outlets. Now, when they sell it through a Verizon or somebody like that, Verizon takes part of the profit. So they make more profit when they could sell it through their own Apple store or through their own their website or controlled selling from them. And yet, even though the profit's different across the board, they charge the same price. And the reason why, and we'll see this when we get to distribution, you don't want your different channels competing against each other. So the extra money, they just keep it. And so that's what they choose to do with it. In certain cases, you reinvest that money. What you do is you give your channel suppliers an extra chunk to incentivize them. So in terms of pricing, we see a lot of the analogies into behavioral economics, meaning an established price has a huge impact on how customers are willing to pay. We have limits on how far we'll pay. For example, nobody's going to pay, unless it's the last cow on the planet, nobody's going to pay $1,000 for a hamburger. And the other big thing about pricing is if my product can tie into Maslow and be a need instead of a want, then naturally I can charge more. And that goes into the whole pain thing. Now, how do I figure out what is my customer sensitivity to paying? Well, I could do experiments and see what happens in the market. Or I could look at what my customer preferences are. So how do I go about doing that? In terms of experiments, I can do my own studies and targeted experiments, or I'll take my own surveys or things like that. Or I could just look at what the data that already exists and see if I can fit a function to it or see if there's a trend. In terms of customer preferences based on pricing, what percentage actually end up purchasing? And especially selling digitally, that makes it a lot easier. So in terms of trying to figure out this price response, because this tells me how much I can charge, there are one of two ways to go about it. One is doing controlled or uncontrolled experiments. And so controlled experiments are things I specifically want to do and see. Like, for example, a controlled experiment is giving coupons out to the elderly and seeing if that has an effect on how they buy. Uncontrolled experiments mean I just take the data that already exists. And this is what we get into with big data. Big data, I look at all the data that exists and I look for clusters or trends or things like that. And so I can look at it whether or not they actually purchased something or did they have an intention to purchase. And so these are the ways of going about finding that information. And in the next video, we'll start to talk about conjoint analysis.